Hello, coaches. Welcome back to another episode of Coach Better Spotlight. My name is Kim Cafino, and I've worked with hundreds of teachers, coaches, and leaders in schools around the world to help them create thriving and sustainable instructional coaching programs. And I'm on a mission to help you coach better. Wherever you are in your coaching journey, we can support you. Come learn with me in one of our courses or private mentoring packages designed specifically for instructional coaches. Join our global Coach Better community, ask any questions you'd like to hear us answer, and find all of our resources for instructional coaches on our website at coachbetter.tv. You can also find us on social media at Eduro Learning or at our Coach Better Facebook group, and subscribe to our channel here on YouTube to catch all of our latest videos. Not sure where to start? Take our free quiz to get a tailored list of resources delivered straight to you and designed specifically for your level of coaching experience. Find it at coachbetter.tv/quiz. Today, I'm chatting with Kim Porter, who at the time of recording was a primary math coach at UWC Singapore and is now a UDL coach and support specialist at ASIJ in Japan. This conversation began when Kim and I were together at the IRCOS Teachers Conference last year, and it was too good not to share with all of you. In this spotlight, Kim and I are unpacking the cognitive load for instructional coaches, particularly in an international school setting where, if you're a regular listener of the podcast, you already know we have additional complexities in our environments. In this episode, we talk about how important it is for instructional coaches to be effective at managing their time, why relationships and understanding people's capacity is so important, how to set boundaries in this very human-focused position, and being aware of yourself so you can be present for others. If this sounds interesting to you, please make sure to check out one of our previous Coach Better Quick Tips episodes from this season. It's called Navigating the Complexities of Instructional Coaching in International Schools, and I will link it up here and in the show notes so you can listen or watch after today's episode. On the full-length audio podcast, we also chat about the elements that make instructional coaching thrive, how international schools are unique in terms of instructional coaching environments, and what Kim wishes she knew when she started out as an instructional coach. This conversation highlights so many of the nuances of an instructional coaching role. If you're curious about coaching, currently a coach, or an experienced coach, there is definitely something here that will resonate with you. To listen to the full-length audio episode, subscribe to Coach Better wherever you get your podcasts. As you watch or listen to today's episode, you'll likely notice that many of the topics we talked about in this episode highlight elements of the Thrive model for sustainable instructional coaching that we follow in the Coach Certificate and Mentorship Program and all of our courses for instructional coaches. And I'll link another video about that topic up here and in the show notes for you so you can get an overview. If you are feeling like you are ready to start growing a thriving coaching culture in your school community, make sure to stay tuned to the end of this episode to hear more about how you can get started with the Thrive model based on your experience level today. Okay, so knowing that this work is so complex, tell us about how you navigate those challenges and opportunities. Like we've just been talking about some of the realities, and maybe you want to dig more into the realities of being a coach. Like, how do you find yourself able to be flexible and adaptable to all of these different changing needs and dynamics in our complicated world of international schools?
I think flexible is the key because things come up. Just yesterday, I do timetable things. So even like projects and times with people, and I color code my calendar so I know what can be moved and what can't. Also, so I can see how my time's distributed. But in that, telling teachers, hey, let's schedule time, but I can move some things around if I need to, that they know that there's flexibility there. Even yesterday, I had a teacher in today. She's like, I really just don't know what to do about this student. If you have a moment, and the thing that was on the schedule wasn't high enough priority. That teacher was much more priority. And so that half hour with her was much more, I made a strategic decision. So it's kind of prioritizing what's most important. Is that project more important or the teacher right now? Or can I say to the teacher, hey, that's great. Let's plan a time to meet. it's an art and a science, just like teaching, I guess, is. Coaching, I feel like, has those same bits, that it's the art of relationship and navigating people, because at the core of everything, we're working with people who are working with children who want to grow and learn. And we're in the business of people, all of us at the table. And so what's most important when you're dealing with that individual or that team or those students' needs in that case? So the reality is there's not a right answer and there's not a way to do it. I think a lot of it is that art and science of navigating people and deciding where priorities lie. So for me, relationship is really important because I want people to feel comfortable to come to me at any time. That being said, I do tell people no. The professional no we talk about at our school, that I'm like, I would love to talk to you about this. Can we schedule a time? I'm not right now. Is it okay? And then there's other times, like, I even had a conversation with my leadership. I've been putting it off. She keeps asking me to do this one project. I'm just like, no, it's not on my priority list. No, it's not on my priority list. And then recognizing it is on hers. So then what do I need to do to shift that? So the reality is I don't know the right way. The answer, I guess, is thinking about the people involved.
Yeah, I love everything you just said about the really focusing on the relationships. And I think the thing that you hinted at, and we've been talking about this whole conversation, is I don't know if it's a leadership skill. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but there is a skill there about prioritizing for the person that you're talking to, prioritizing for your own self, prioritizing for the work that has to be done, being able to juggle. I mean, that's, again, not necessarily the right word, but being able to juggle all these things and know that if right now I make the decision to drop this one thing, what is the domino effect that that's going to have? And how am I able to deal with that? Like, I don't think, we talk about the cognitive load of mothers in the home, the cognitive load of women in the home. I think there's a cognitive load here that we're talking about that is not usually directly addressed, not usually something we talk about in terms of the role of the coach. When we define the position, they have their specific tasks that you're supposed to do. And we already talked about the intentionality behind all those different tasks and all the different layers that support those tasks being successful. But then there's this other piece of like your leadership, your influence comes through relationships and the cognitive load of managing those relationships. And it's with all stakeholders, right? Because it goes up to your leader that you were saying you might have to reprioritize because it's her priority, and all the way down to the students that are in the classroom, and many times out to the parents because there's a connection there too. And sometimes it's over to the board and sometimes it's with teaching assistants. Like, it's all over the place because you're right. All of our roles in schools are about working with people, but coaches especially, we don't have that direct contact time with kids. Everything we do is filtered through another person. So for us to be successful, it's the relationship that has to be successful first.
Definitely. And I think when you talk about that cognitive load of the mom or the woman in the home, that's a really good connection because, and also, we talk a lot about for women, have your time for yourself, prioritize you, because if you're well, then your family's well. I feel the same as a coach in the sense that I have to have boundaries in place of when I'm working and when I'm not. And I've been really strategic about that. That's a personal wellness thing that I know I can be full on when I'm at work. If I am full on, I am there 110%. I go, go, go. But when I turn off at the end of that day, I turn off, because for me to do that again the next day, I need the off button.
Yes. And actually, what you're talking about reminds me of a podcast that I recorded many years ago, maybe even in the first year of this podcast, with Cindy Tisdale McPhee. I don't know if she's still at UWC now, but at the time, She was
I've heard
there.
her name. I
Yeah.
know I've heard of her. People talk about her.
And we talked about the importance of self-care for coaches. And what she said was exactly what you just said. And it has always stuck with me is that for people to opt in to work with a coach, the coach has to be present. The coach has to be available. The coach has to be perceived as being a person I can come to, and they're calm and collected and ready, right? And for you to be all of those things, you have to set those boundaries so that you have whatever mental space, whatever time you need with your family, whatever it is you need that lets you reset. Those boundaries are important. And so I also appreciate why you talked about, or that you talked about, the professional no, because I think that's so hard if we're always thinking about it's my job to support others, but still sometimes I have to say no.
Yeah, and I think even when teachers come to me, it's a lot of corridor conversations, right? Like a lot of opportunities come from in passing, or I'll put myself strategically in spaces outside of my office if I'm working on certain things. You know, we have a little coaching couches area, or I'll put myself in different spaces throughout the school. That's when people pass by, especially near the copy machine. Everyone goes there and we'll be like, hey, Kim, I was wondering about this, or what about, you know, and they'll see me in those spaces that are more common spaces. And when those conversations come, and I have to know that when I sit in certain spaces, although I'm working on a project, I have to be ready to put it aside and fully focus on what that person is saying to me in that moment and kind of compartmentalize that. And I do that strategically, but at the same time, I have to know moments that I'm not ready to do that. Like when there's days that I am at the end of my cognitive load, my brain is not going to do anything the last hour of this day. I am hiding out because I am not going to be able to help anyone. I can't even help myself and focus right now because I've used my brain power too much today. So kind of being aware of my own self and what I can give and what I can bring to the table that day and what I can do for being present is also, that awareness is really important to being successful.
Yes, so many things. We've just talked about so many things. This whole conversation, there's so many pieces of unpacking really I don't even know what the word is. I usually say the realities of a coaching role, but that's not even really what we're talking about here. We're just talking about everything almost other than the job, because the job is relatively clear. We can define what the job is. We can create a coaching menu and share what the job is. But there's all these other pieces that enable you to actually do the job. And those are the things that can be kind of hidden. And we kind of have to figure out what works for us individually, what works within our context of our school, what works for our colleagues, what works within the context of the host country culture. That's another thing that I had in my article about, like, we might have talked about it, but like I have a lot of clients in Europe and they have come from Asia, and there's many things they love about Europe, but they're used to the kind of how do I put this, high pressure, nonstop work expectations of Asia that do not exist in Europe. So you come from Asia and you go to Europe and you're like, what do you mean you can't meet with me after school? Like I'm always meeting after school. Or you come from Europe to Asia and you're like, what do you mean you want me to meet after school? Like, I'm going home after school. So, like, even that, like the fact that we move globally and we have to reset all of those things every time we come to a new country, of course, you're going to have to do that, but you don't know the nitty gritty until you get there.
And there's the school culture too, and the
Yes.
leadership culture and expectation, and your colleagues' expectation from their experience because they may be new to the school also. And it's this conglomeration of all trying to figure it out and everybody's expectations. And I feel like in the role, there's a lot of boundary setting, but you don't want to set too many boundaries because you have to be personable and open and flexible. So it's kind of this balancing act. You talked about juggling all the balls. You are juggling constantly. And that's why I said you have to turn off the switch because you can't juggle 24/7. So when are you going to put the balls down for a little while and you can pick them up again tomorrow? There's definitely that for sure. As someone who came from Europe for a long time to Asia, it's been different. It's definitely a different mentality, and there's pros and cons to that, right? Like everyone is full on ready to go. They're runners. We'll try anything, Kim. They're spot on. At the same time, I felt like my whole first year was telling people like, okay, we can't do it all at once. Like it's not possible. So where do you want to start? Like we can't do all of this, but we can. No, we literally cannot. So I feel like sometimes I'm the person putting on the brakes a bit to say like, okay, let's choose one part, one starting part, one thing to focus on. And maybe that's another role of the coach is kind of prioritizing or synthesizing, weeding out all of the ideas to say, okay, what's the strategic plan? Where do we want to start? What's the focus? What's the priority? But I do think, Kim, you made me think maybe your next book is coming to light in this conversation.
I am writing a book right now about some of this, not specifically this, but maybe there'll be some ways I can weave it in because yes, I mean, this whole concept would be a great book.
Because I think, like you said, it's the things that aren't like defined in the role. Like it would be interesting. Now you make me wonder, like if we could write down or solidify or somehow articulate or graphically show all the other aspects of this role that aren't actually the job description, that are the cognitive load that people are managing.
I'm taking notes. Yes, I'm going to work on that. I'm going to work at least on an infographic of some sort because yes, I agree. And I think all of these, I love having these podcast conversations because for me, they're always an opportunity to grow and they're always an opportunity for me to like put like thoughts are like slotting into place as I'm talking to you right now. And this conversation that we're having was started at the EarCoast conference and it's been percolating in my mind and it's come together with a lot of other conversations that I've had. And I love just being able to see, oh, there's something here. There's something here that resonates with someone else. There's something here that could be valuable for others. And you're right. I think there is something that is about the role that it's not defined that needs to be clear. And it would be helpful for people moving into a coaching role. It would be helpful for school leaders to understand. I have some other clients who are struggling with associate principal who keeps asking them to sub. And I'm like, you have to figure out how you say no to this because all that'll happen is then all you'll be doing is subbing. And then there's no way for you to make a positive impact as a coach because all you're doing is subbing. And they don't realize that time that you weren't like actively doing a coaching task was all this other stuff that we're talking about. And so how do you articulate that for yourself so you recognize what you need to do when you move to a new school or whatever the case may be, or you become a coach out of the classroom? And how do you articulate that for others, for your school leaders who are sometimes defining the way you spend your time? And maybe sometimes for those colleagues who come to you and ask you for something and now isn't a time that you can do it. Like, how do you say no? Oh, I've got all these other things going on. So, all right, a project has been born. A section of the book has been identified. I love it.
It's the other toolkit. You have your coaching toolkit.
Yes.
I don't know what we would call that.
Yes. Okay. A name will come. I love it. I love it. Thanks for watching this clip with Kim. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you have been a long-time listener to the podcast or a subscriber here on YouTube, I'm sure you noticed many references to themes that we talk about on the podcast all the time. It was so good to have this conversation with another highly experienced coach because we were able to build on each other's ideas coming from a place of shared experience. This conversation really resonated with me because so many of the conversations I have with my clients are just like this. Many coaches in many schools are sharing these similar experiences, but we're often the only instructional coach in the school or the division, so we don't have that many people to talk about those experiences with. And we're also curious about what this looks like in other schools. That's why I started all of our courses for coaches, and each of them has a global cohort component. Each of our global cohorts create intentional time and space for instructional coaches and educators around the world to get together and actually talk about the realities of their experience. We offer 3 global cohorts a year, all tailored to your specific experience level. Each of our 3 global cohorts will help you take the next step in your coaching journey, either as a brand new coach moving from classroom to coach in getting started as an instructional coach, or as a current coach in the Coach Certificate and Mentorship Program, where you're ready to build an intentionally sustainable and thriving coaching program, or as a coach who's ready to lead in our course, Coaches as Leaders. Find all the details about all 3 of our global cohorts and all of our courses on our website at coachbetter.tv/learn. Global cohorts open once a year. Find all the details at coachbetter.tv/learn. And if you're not sure which course is right for you, watch one of our free workshops designed specifically for instructional coaches and tailored specifically to your experience level to see how you can take the next step in your learning right now and maybe uncover which course is right for you next. Find it all at coachbetter.tv/learn. Wherever you are in your coaching journey, we can support you. If you're curious right now, if you have questions, please reach out. You can leave a comment below here on our YouTube channel, or you can leave a comment on our show notes at coachbetter.tv. You can join our Coach Better Facebook group, or you can find me on social media at Eduro Learning and send me a DM. I'd love to support you in your coaching journey. See you next time.